Hi everyone, I'm Danielle Byington, and this is another video covering material from Homer's Iliad. This video is going to talk about the content, a sort of summary of the events that happen in book one, because there are various translations. In case you are not using the textbook that my courses use, I'm going to refer to line numbers so you can find this no matter what translation you're using. So in the opening of book one, we have the very well-known instance of the invocation of the muse. Now, the invocation of the muse, if you recall from the background information about the Iliad, if these oral tradition stories, they were not originally written and meant to be read by readers. The audience was more like people at an event, a sort of dinner party, what have you, listening to these lines being recited by a bard. So they are singing the story, the lines of poetry that comprise the whole story, right? So the invocation of the muse is sort of calling on that collective unconscious of the human race, like remind me, inspire me of this story of our past. And also, you may be familiar with a muse in general. We use it a little more usefully in the modern age now as someone who inspires all of this sort of art and genius in someone. The events, again, if you recall in the background video, we are starting in media res. We are in the middle of things. We're not starting at the beginning of the 10 years of the Trojan War. We are in the last few weeks of the Trojan War. So we are in a post-battle sort of scene. There have been other instances of battle in which some of the Greeks have taken hostage or taken captive women as their prizes. So these are enslaved women. Essentially, this is human trafficking. It's sex slavery. And those two women that are mentioned in this specific book are Chryseis and Briseis. Chryseis is kind of the crux of the situation here, the whole argument going on between Agamemnon and Achilles. So we're going to have someone come in. This is a priest. This is Chryseis, who is going to plead to Agamemnon to please give my daughter back. She was taken hostage during one of the battles. And he comes bearing a ransom. Now, I said he's a priest. He is specifically a priest in the temple of Apollo. Now, when Chryses makes this plea, the other Greeks agree, like, yes, like, please give the old man his daughter back. But Agamemnon will not allow his pride to be hurt and totally disagrees, yells at the old man to leave. And because the Chryses didn't get what he wanted, he's now going to pray to Apollo and ask Apollo to take revenge on them. And so Apollo, and you can see in this image here on screen, Apollo's here in the background. Your text says that Apollo comes down. This is roughly lines 42 through 60 in book one. Apollo comes down, and with his silver bow and arrow, he shoots a plague onto the Greeks, and the men are dying left and right. They fall deathly ill for 9 days. On the 10th day, Achilles is like, we have to do something about this. And everyone basically knows what the problem is. It's because Apollo is angry, but they still ask the advice of a seer, and that is Calchas. This is about line 79 through 82. who it said that's the description of him. It says that one of his gifts is that he scans the flight of birds. If you remember in Sappho's Ode to Aphrodite, it talks about Aphrodite coming down from Mount Olympus in as a manifestation of sparrows. So sort of that fluid, liquid movement of birds. Now, many of the gods and goddesses have animal representations, and to scan for birds would be like to look for what are the emotions or the needs of the gods or goddesses. So this priest-like character can see that, and they ask for his advice, and he tells them, essentially what you could guess he's going to tell them. Apollo is mad because the priest has cursed us all because we didn't give his daughter back. It's all pretty obvious. So Agamemnon is still not having it. He says to Calchas, "Can't you ever give any kind of positive advice? How come everything you say is about defeating me?" So Agamemnon has a terrible, nasty ego, and he does not want to give up his the Norton anthology of world literature refers to Chryseis in a footnote as being the booty he has taken. So she is his prize from that battle that he has kidnapped and taken as an enslaved woman. He doesn't want to be disgraced. He doesn't want to lose his honor. Doesn't want to damage his pride by giving her up. And Achilles tries to reason with him, saying, our people are dying. They are suffering from a plague put on us by Apollo. We need to give the daughter back to the priest so the curse will be lifted. And Agamemnon takes his anger out on Achilles, telling him, well, then I'll give up my woman and I will take your woman that you have taken hostage instead. And he will go on to take Briseis from Achilles. In that moment, this is about lines 228 through 251. Athena steps in right as we have Achilles about to pull his sword from his sheath and kill Agamemnon in this moment of anger. And Athena steps in to stop him. It says she grabs him by the hair to pull him back. And it says no one but Achilles could see Athena in this moment. And she tells him, don't take your anger out on Agamemnon. Myself, as well as Hera, we are goddesses who support the Greeks and want the Trojans to be taken down. We don't want to see Greeks fighting with other Greeks. That doesn't make sense. And she goes on to tell him that in those lines I mentioned, if he goes on to follow this advice to don't take the anger out on Agamemnon, he's going to be rewarded threefold with a glittering gift, as the Robert Fagles translation says. So it's a god-like kind of gift. It's not something material. He's going to be rewarded by a type of immortality. He cannot literally be immortal because his mother is an immortal, but his father is immortal. So he can never live forever, literally, but figuratively, he can. As a war hero, he will be remembered for being the warrior of the warriors on that side. And as a matter of fact, here we are in the 21st century still talking about him, so she must have been right. Moving on, we have in lines 361 through 372, you have the sacrifice of cattle and goats to Apollo, and also the return of Chryseis to Chryses, to her father. So all of that is now settled. So we've returned the daughter and made an offering to Apollo. So everything is settled and the plague will be lifted. In the going into the end of this book, you have Achilles crying for his mother Thetis because he's angry. And she arrives and he tells her about everything that has happened, basically everything you just have read from the first line up to this point. This is about lines 413 through 469. So he fills Thetis in on all of these events that have happened and why he is so angry. And he asks his mother to plead to Zeus, the god of the gods, the king of the gods, to help give the Trojans an advantage over the Greeks. That seems like it might be counterproductive for him, but at this point, Achilles has said, let them know what they've lost by not having me fight for them. He's just going to lay around basically in the camp and not help them anymore because he's so angry with Agamemnon. And he wants the Trojans to really put the hurt on the Greeks so they know how valuable he is. And so Thetis does go to Zeus and plead to him to do so. And then in the last few lines or so of book one, you basically have a scene of like Hera shows up and wants to know what was Thetis whispering to you about, asking Zeus this because he has been known to have some secrets on the side in his marriage with Hera. And he even says, in depending on the whatever translation you're looking at of this text, he even says, oh, you always think I'm up to no good. That's because he is. And then they go on to have a dinner with other gods and goddesses. And it's essentially a kind of reflection of what would be equal in our world in modern day might be celebrity culture. They are way up in this whole other sort of world, immortals living on Mount Olympus who are worshipped by the people down below. So it's kind of like celebrities today, but it's also demonstrating that, you know, they're having their drama and we have our drama. We are not unlike each other. So that's all for book one from Homer's Iliad.